Hello, and welcome to The Direct Approach with Wayne Moorhead, an exclusive podcast by DSN filled with candid and insightful conversations with leading corporate executives about today's evolving direct sales channel. In this episode, Wayne interviews Rudy Revak, a successful entrepreneur and direct selling legend. Rudy is the founder and chairman of Xyngular, and owner and chairman of Pure Haven Essentials, and was also recognized earlier this year with the 2023 DSN Lifetime Achievement Award. Rudy shares impactful stories from his past that have shaped his approach to continuous growth and adaptability. He emphasizes the importance of staying grounded and never forgetting where you came from. Rudy's insights shed light on the fundamental principles of success in the industry, highlighting the significance of personal development, building strong distributor and customer bases, maintaining customer relationships, and sticking to the basics. He shares his insights on the evolution of the business model and stresses the importance of maintaining genuine human connections in the age of social media. With more than 50 years in the direct selling industry, Rudy has a wealth of experience and wisdom to share. Whether you're new to the channel or have years of industry experience, this episode is a goldmine of insights and practical tips to help you take your business and career to new heights. But before we get to the interview, DSN is honored to be supported by industry suppliers that partner with companies across the channel to help enhance, streamline, and grow your businesses. And this episode is sponsored by Thatcher Technology Group. Are you ready for what's next? With Thatcher Technology Group, adapt faster, scale smarter, and grow more sustainably with Ascend, a headless, microservice-based direct selling solution empowering your business with unparalleled flexibility and scalability. Ascend to what's next by visiting thatchertech.com to learn more. That's thatchertech.com. Without further ado, please help me welcome your host, Wayne Moorhead, and direct selling legend, 2023's DSN Lifetime Achievement Award winner, founder and chairman of Xyngular, and owner and chairman of Pure Haven Essentials, Mr. Rudy Revak.
Hello and welcome to another episode of DSN's Direct Approach podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Moorhead, and today I have the great honor to speak with a direct selling legend. He's had incredible success as a distributor, in corporate leadership, and as an entrepreneur, where he has started and acquired multiple direct selling companies. He's had a huge impact on the channel as a whole and the lives of its distributors. I'm excited to welcome Rudy Revak, founder and chairman at Xyngular, and owner and chairman at Pure Haven Essentials. Rudy, thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, Wayne. Yes, thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking with you.
As I mentioned, this is an incredible honor. You are a well-known figure in direct selling and has had and continues to have an incredible impact and has really helped shape what direct selling is today. And I've had the opportunity to speak with you and be at events and meetings with you, and I've always learned a tremendous amount for you. And you have such an incredible kind of origin story, just like every superhero does. And I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about that and the path that led you into direct selling.
Sure, happy to. As you've probably heard from me many times, I love this industry, and it starts because of my background. I actually was not born in America. My mom and dad are Hungarian and Romanian refugees who escaped after the war to get away from the communists. And then they were in a refugee camp in southern Germany, and that's where I was born as a refugee. When I was 5 years old, we were fortunate enough to reach my parents' goal, which was to move to America. And we came here to America, and my parents worked very, very hard. I spent most of my young life being raised on a chicken farm. And when I got older, I decided, of course, that's not what I wanted to do. But I had no major education. We had no money. I couldn't go on to college. But I wound up spending 3 years in the United States Army, spent my 1 year in Vietnam, 13 months. And when I came home from Vietnam, they said under the GI Bill that I could go to college and they would help pay for it. And I thought, wow, this is great. They're going to give me $271 a month to go sit in school. I was good at sitting and I needed the money. So I went back to work in the retail store I worked in and started to go to college full time. And during that time, again, I was working full time, going to school full time. One day I came home from work and my telephone was ringing at home. And it was a total stranger who basically said, when I answered the phone, I said, hello. He said, hi, would you like to make more money? And I said, don't hang up. And that was the start of it, because he invited me to a business presentation. I lived in a little farm town in the middle of New Jersey. I had to go 60 miles to get to this meeting. And I went to the meeting, and they showed me how that night, if I was willing to work, I could change my life. And I was all in. And I got started in that business. That was 1970, November of 1970. And the truth is, for the first 9 months I was in that business, I was one of the best, one of the most terrific, one of the most outstanding failures that they had at that point. I did awful. I was only 23 years old. It was, and the business I joined, by the way, was, it cost $3,217 to join. And so that was a challenge alone, because I came home that night from the meeting and my dad asked me where I'd been. So I drew some circles on a napkin on the kitchen table and tried to explain it to him. And I didn't understand it all, but I was excited. And my dad was very smart. My dad said to me, look, Rudy, he said, those people are trying to show you how to work smart and not just hard for the rest of your life. But of course, I had no money. I couldn't get in this thing. Well, to make a long story short, 3 weeks later, my dad came to me with a check for $3,217. And they had no money. They put up the house and the farm to borrow that money. And this was 1970. So that's like, I don't know, $40,000, $50,000 in today's dollars. And gave me that check and said, I want to give you the chance that I never had. And so that was kind of the start. And I went to work. And as I said, I didn't do very well at the beginning because most of my friends didn't have $3,200. I didn't know any older people who did have $3,200. And by the way, I'll make a little comment there, because some people have said to me in the past, oh, you joined one of those pyramid companies because they charge you $3,200. No, people don't understand nowadays that back in those days, there was no UPS, there was no FedEx, there was no shipping systems. We became the, quote, local distributor. I was called a direct distributor. So I had these products, and then I recruited people who were called local distributors. And then those distributors would go and sell product, and they would get the products from me. So we were the local warehouse, so they could pick up products and deliver them right away. So anyway, that's how I got started. And things, after the first 9 months of not doing well, thanks to a lot of great people like Mr. Jim Rowe and Bill Bailey, Marty Day. I mean, I could mention a lot of them who hung in there with me and taught me. And thanks to them, I finally learned. And then once I learned really good. And I eventually moved up in that company. It was called Bestline. I moved up in that company and went down to from New Jersey to Baltimore to become an area coordinator. I did very well there as an area coordinator. And then from there, the company was expanding internationally, and they found out I spoke a little bit of German. So they convinced me to go to Germany. So I went to Germany, and I was still a distributor at the time, by the way. I went over, and so the first thing I did was started to build my own organization. And again, to condense the story over a period of a couple of years, I did well, and I became the sales leader of the company. And then from there, they moved me, asked me to go to Canada. Went to Canada, built a very successful business, again, as a personal business. But now I was also part of the company. I'd also moved up as I eventually became the president of that company. It didn't start that way, so I built a very successful business in Canada. From there, I moved to Italy, spent a couple of years in Italy doing the same thing, which really was a challenge because at least in Germany, I spoke a little of the language. In Italy, I spoke none, but we still built a very successful business there. And then in 1983, I came back to the United States. Got involved with another company that was called Dynamite, which became also a very successful company at the time. And that was owned by Mr. Jerry Brassfield, who you probably know. Jerry is one of the legends also in the industry.
Absolutely.
A wonderful, terrific guy. And that became a success story. And then from there, for a multitude of reasons, I decided to go out and start my own in 1995. And that's when I started Symmetry. So, and then from there, then we started, 13 years ago, we started Xyngular. So here we are.
It is such an incredible and inspiring story. And there's so much to learn in that. One, I am kind of an indirect beneficiary of the GI Bill. My dad got drafted during Korea, served, and then went to college, would not have been able to go without that. So that led to a lot of opportunities that he had. And then obviously, indirectly, some of the opportunities that, has been afforded to me. But I think one of the things that really strikes me there is that individual that called you, that stranger that was probably nervous on the other line, wondering whether they should place that phone call or not, but somehow got the courage to call and ended up, bringing you into direct selling and all of the downstream impact that has been had from that single phone call, kind of that single moment of courage that someone in the field had, to reach out and connect and tell somebody about the benefits and the promises of direct selling. I think that's incredible. I think it also shows the incredible impact that direct selling can have on someone's entire life. So, and I know we're going to get into some of the personal development and growth, but again, just watching you start out as a distributor and then become this absolute legend in direct selling, getting the Lifetime Achievement Award from DSN. There is so much to learn from that story. And you mentioned some of the people that you were involved with early in direct selling, and that was such a special time, almost this Camelot time, it seems like, in direct selling, where there were so many of these legends working with each other and learning and mentoring and kind of rubbing shoulders, people like yourself, people like John Fleming, who have impacted so many people, Jim Rohn, who have impacted so many people, as you mentioned. I'm curious, as you look back on that time, what was it about that moment in direct selling that made it so special and have such an impact on the rest of us in corporate for decades?
I think it was because we built relationships back then, which is the foundation to this industry, to what we do today, whether it's network marketing or party plan businesses. It's the building of the relationships that makes us special. That's why we're so good. That's why we've lasted all these years. And that's why we've become so successful. And it was those people, the Jim Rohns, who, I can't tell you how much Jim changed my entire life. And by the way, Jim came out of the same company I did. He was back then, was a distributor. He was one of the trainers in the company, but he was also in that same company. So, by the way, was John Fleming. We all came out of that same initial company. And
amazing.
Jim Rohn that was the magic. When I heard Jim Rohn, remember, I was 23 years old. Jim was probably in his early 30s then, because he was about 8 or 10 years older than me. But Jim made such an impact on me, because I remember him standing up in front of the room and saying, look, for things to change, you have to change. And for things to get better, you have to get better. And that I bought into that philosophy. And then with his help of all of the personal development training that he did over that time to make us better, my gosh, that's what did it. And I believe that still does it to this day. We are a relationship build business. You'll hear me say 100 times, we build people and people build our business. And if we don't build the people, we don't build a business. Oh, we can sell some products, but we're not going to build a good long-term business. So.
Absolutely. That is, I think, one of the superpowers of direct selling is our ability to build relationships, to build communities. And again, from kind of a competitive or differentiation standpoint, that is something that we do better, than any other channel, than any other type of business out there. But again, we still look back on that time, all of us at corporate, and have learned so much and look at that as such a pivotal time for all of us in direct selling that really kind of created the business model and how we do business today. And I'm always interested in corporate leaders that started out in the field. That's something I didn't have the kind of pleasure of doing, but I've spent my career trying to really understand the field and that mindset. And that must have been that perspective that you got such a great advantage as you then transitioned into more of a corporate role. And I'm curious, that perspective that you got, how did that kind of help and inform and empower you once you got into the corporate side?
Well, Wayne, is tremendous because, unless you have gone and talked to 10 people and got all no's, and unless you've gone out and had the people laugh at you for trying to enroll them in your business or try to sell them your product, you can't understand what it's like for the distributor on a daily basis. See? And so I think that's a big benefit for me. One of the things that I constantly am driving into our businesses, and that is the most valuable asset we have in our company is not our product, not our business, not our IT systems. The most valuable asset we have is our distributor field. And if you forget that, if you get that out of sync with your business and you're not focused on them and what you can do to help them improve and grow and develop and get better, then long term, it can't work.
Absolutely. That is kind of when it seems like companies can kind of go off the rails a little bit, when they start feeling that the distributors or the field work for them instead of the reverse. We're really there to support, energize, grow the field. And the companies that succeed, especially long-term, as you mentioned, are those that are really distributor focused, field focused, and continually understand those needs, wants, and desires of the field. You mentioned also your time as they sent you kind of to Germany and then Italy and other international markets. What was it about kind of gaining that international perspective? Again, you had some of it growing up, but directly, working in the direct selling channel, why was that time in international so pivotal to the rest of your career?
Well, that's a good question, because one of the interesting things about our industry is people always think, oh, well, you're different. I don't know, because you're in a different part of the country, or you're different age, or you're younger, you're older, you're this, you're that. So that makes it different for you than it does for me. One of the things I learned quickly when I went international was people are people. They want the same things. They love their family just like I love my family. They want a better future just like I wanted a better future. Now, maybe some of the ways we got to that point of helping them to reach those goals, maybe they'll change a little bit. Maybe if I do business in the Midwest, it's a little bit different than doing business in downtown New York City. Okay, that might be. But the goals and dreams and aspirations and the things that our business sells so well and gives so well to people, the promise of the future, the hope and opportunity, those things, I don't care where you go on earth, they're the same. And I learned that by being in those various countries. So I think that's probably the primary thing.
I love that. Getting that perspective. We go into often just thinking it's kind of easy to kind of localize everything or kind of, translate what we did in a home market into these others, but having that perspective of those fields where we are so much the same. Those dreams and desires are exactly the same, but there are some subtle differences in the way maybe we communicate and we operate. That's invaluable perspective, I think, to have from the corporate side. So you were a very successful field leader and then transitioned into corporate. I'm curious, what inspired you to leave the field and move into corporate and kind of leave maybe your team and the organization that you had built to focus on building the corporate side of the business as well?
Well, for me, Wayne, it was kind of a natural process, and here's why. When I joined this industry in 1970, we didn't have all the systems, obviously, that we have today. We didn't have 8 levels of paying down line. Why? We didn't have computer systems. I mean, I can remember having these spreadsheets we just had 1 and 2 and 3 levels, and people would do it on paper spreadsheets to try to figure out the levels in a generation. It was hard. So in those days when I joined, the concept was that you worked hard, you built your business, you came to a certain point, and then you would become what they called in the company I was with an area coordinator. And so you became the person in a certain area. For example, when I moved from New Jersey to Maryland, I became the area coordinator there. And so I did weekly meetings and weekly trainings, and people came into the meetings and the training events that I was doing. And for that, I got an override of the area. I was still building my business personally, but then I also got an override for helping other people build their business. So it was kind of having a 3% commission on the entire area. They weren't all my people, but I was helping all those people. And then from there, you moved up to become what they call the regional director. And then the next level was an assistant vice president. And this was all in the sales. So when I went to Germany, I went there as, quote, an assistant vice president of the sales field, but still as an independent distributor.
Gotcha.
So I kind of naturally worked into the corporate side. And then eventually I did very well. And I was fortunate enough, they promoted me to president. And that's how I wound up in that position.
Oh, that's really incredible. And I know there are a couple companies that kind of have that or bring in kind of a dual role. Someone that sits at corporate, maybe sits at the board or on the exec team, but also still has one foot in the field. And I think those people are invaluable. To be able to have both perspectives and to see kind of both sides of the business is such a great asset to have there at corporate. And kind of as it relates to systems, I want to talk in a second about kind of some of the importance of really having a great system, a duplicatable system. Part of that revolves around customers. And we've seen greater and greater emphasis over the last several years of companies focused on the customer, of having more of a direct relationship with that customer. I'm curious, with your perspective, what do you feel is the right approach or balance to take? Oftentimes we can focus on the field at the expense of customers and vice versa. Where do you feel that balance should be from a corporate perspective?
My personal feeling about that is this. People talk about, oh, we got to go get more customers. I totally agree. So business is built on customers. Without customers, we don't survive long term. The question is, who gets those customers? How do you get those customers? So if I want more customers, and I'm a network marketing company or a party plan company, if I want more customers, what if I got more distributors? If each of my distributors has 10 customers, let's just keep it simple, and I have 1,000 distributors, okay, how many customers am I going to have? 10,000, that's great. But if I want more distributors, what if I got 10,000 distributors and each of them had 10 customers and we're making money? I'm growing my sales field. I'm growing my customer base consistently. So from my way of thinking, if I build more people and they go and get their customers, I am doing both. That's the whole concept behind our business. Mary Kay didn't get, I don't know how many customers they have around the world. They didn't get those themselves. They got them by getting a lot of ladies who wanted to build a business, who each went out and got their own 100 customers. So 1,000 people with 100 customers, wow, 100,000 customers overnight. How hard would it be for me alone to go get 100,000 customers? And more important, how hard would it be if I got those 100,000 customers to keep them? Without the business partner involved, without our distributors involved, how do I keep those customers? So that's my point of view. More business partners, more people that I'm helping to succeed, I will build a lot of customers.
That is such valuable perspective. And it gets back to your comment about relationships, that as we kind of maintain those relationships with the field and field leaders, they're going to build those relationships with new customers or help retain them over the long term. And I think we lose sight of that, especially in today's kind of more digital world. We lose sight that those distributors are going to have really deep relationships that are inevitably going to lead to greater lifetime value and greater longevity with the customers themselves. Definitely. I know at times I've lost sight of that for sure.
100%. If we know that customers are very fickle. Tomorrow, somebody else will be blowing in their ear about a great product. The next week, there's somebody else. And there's a commercial on television. And they're constantly being bombarded with other messages. If they don't have a personal relationship with the person they're buying from, well, then why not try all this other stuff? But if I have a relationship with my neighbor, Mary, and I do like her products, they're great products, and she's giving me good service, why would I want to go somewhere else?
Absolutely. No, I love that. So throughout your entrepreneurial journey, there's been a few things that have been big parts of your entrepreneurial and leadership style. And a couple of them might sound kind of commonplace, but the simple stuff is often the hard stuff and is often forgotten. And I know personal communication is something that you became a master at and then helped the field and all those that work for you at corporate. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of that personal communication and really being amazing at it?
Well, from my point of view, I think the key to communicating well with our field and with our office staff and with anybody else is to maintain your humbleness. Sometimes we become so successful that we forget where we came from. And I have always tried to remember I'm a chicken farmer that got very lucky by meeting some great people who helped me to succeed. And my master teacher, who was on this earth 2,000 years ago, said, "He who wants to be the greatest must become the least." And I believe that. I really believe in that philosophy. In order for me to be their leader, I need to also be able to be part of them, understand who they are, where they are, and help them move forward. So I think communication has a lot to do with you being humble enough to lower yourself or to bring yourself down to the understanding of wherever that person is that you're talking to, whether that's in-house in the corporate area or in the sales field. And even in the sales field, how many different levels of sales leaders do we have? Right? So hopefully we are communicating with them at their level, is my point.
I love that. I think oftentimes we communicate with kind of a single message, a single loudspeaker to the entire field. And I think that is important to remember, that each of the field members, each of the sales leaders are at a different spot, need to be communicated differently and kind of moved along this continuum. But yeah, you can't speak to all of them exactly the same, or it's never going to resonate or connect. Absolutely.
2024 marks DSN's 20th anniversary, and we invite you to celebrate monumental milestones with us at the biggest and best events yet. Get ready for a year of global expansion, featuring more events, more value, and more content than ever before. We invite you and your team to mark your calendars to secure your spot to be in the room, at the table, and in the conversations. Our spring events, taking place April 2nd through April 4th, will be extraordinary. This includes the annual Global Celebration and Awards event with live music with the Free Radicals Band this year, the invitation-only CEO Forum, and 2 full days of DSU, all taking place at the Irving Convention Center in Irving, Texas, located just 15 minutes from DFW Airport and Love Field. Register now for the spring events at dsnevents.com. DSU remains free for all active corporate direct selling executives, and tickets for the in-person Global Celebration and Awards event can also be purchased at dsnevents.com. A reminder that DSN supporter companies have access to a set number of tickets as part of your benefits to the Global Celebration and Awards. If you have any questions about your benefits, please visit directsellingnews.com or contact our team at events@directsellingnews.com. This episode is also sponsored by PayQuicker. Your business moves fast, but is your money keeping up? PayQuicker's award-winning solution lets your business make payouts across the globe instantly. Send payments to over 200 countries and territories in more than 40 currencies through PayQuicker's secure API with funds available to spend immediately. PayQuicker is a fully customizable, white label payment platform, letting you offer branded debit cards, instant virtual cards, global bank transfers, mobile wallets, cash, and more. Plus, you get their bank-grade security and global compliance coupled with multilingual account support, so you can focus on growing your business. Start paying your sales force instantly with the largest global payout provider to direct selling organizations, because faster payouts to your distributors means they grow their business and yours faster. Learn today at payquicker.com. Now let's get back to the interview.
Another thing that we touched on was personal development. And I know this is something that is so important to you and to your businesses. And as you mentioned, I've heard you use that quote, "We build people and people build our businesses." Again, I think at times we can kind of get away from this idea of personal development and feel like, well, that was kind of part of the system or the playbook of the past, but it is so vital to our companies. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of having a personal development program within a direct selling company?
Sure. Well, first of all, Wayne, I believe that our business, our industry, what we're doing, network marketing, party plan, the direct selling industry, I think that we are the average person's best chance to reach their dreams. I really believe that. Now, whether they're small dreams and they want to make a couple $100s a month to make their end of the month and the end of the money come together, or they're someone like me who needed a career, wanted to go as far as I could go. Whatever that is, those people, we have people who join our business that are from all different walks of life. I mean, golly, we have people in our business who are doctors and lawyers and engineers and some politicians, and we have the homemaker, we have the truck driver, we have the factory worker, so all of these people in one same business. Well, the secret to that moving forward is that all of those people need personal development at different levels. But when we talk about attitude, and we talk about belief, and we talk about desire, and we talk about being able to go to work, and we talk about persistence, those things are the same, whether it's a homemaker or it's a factory worker or it's a doctor. They still have to keep growing. And that growth, in my opinion, and from what I learned, again, this is not me, this is all from what I learned from Jim Rohn's and a lot of others, Xyngular's back in those days and in the early days, a lot of other good people and all the great books, Think and Grow Rich and The Power of Positive Thinking and The Magic of Believing and The Magic of Thinking Big and all of those books that I read back in those days. What I learned from all of that was, if we want to move forward, we have to continue this personal development. It never stops just because you've reached a certain level. Matter of fact, usually, and especially in our industry, this happens. Once a person reaches a certain level, all of a sudden they think they don't need any more personal growth. And when that day comes, in many times, that becomes the downfall, because now all of a sudden they start moving backwards. So anyway, I go from New Jersey to Baltimore, Maryland. I was in Towson, Maryland, where I live, and that's where I had this meeting location. And I start building. I'm an area coordinator, and things are going great. I'm making more money than I ever made in my life. It just blew up. I don't know why. I was excited. I was enthusiastic. I was working hard, and the business just blew up for me. And all of a sudden, we had like 50 area coordinators in the country, and I became one of the top 5. And every month we would fly into the company because they had this regional director meeting, but the top 5 area coordinators could come, and we would fight for that. And here I am, I'm making $10,000, $12,000 a month. This is 1971 for a chicken farmer. That was a ton of money. That's like, in today's world, I mean, gosh, that's tons. And I'd never seen so much money in my life. And all of a sudden, that humbleness I was talking about went away. All of a sudden, I wasn't a chicken farmer anymore. And pretty soon, my regional director, his name was Marty Day, a wonderful guy, taught me a ton. And the distributors start telling Marty that Rudy's getting out of control. Now, there was more to it than that, but basically that's what they were saying, telling these stories about how my ego was getting out of control. And it was my ego. And we were in this, we were going to do a meeting together. He had come to town and he had a motel room where we had the meeting room. And we're walking along and he's trying to be kind to me in this meeting room and to tell me, look, Rudy, you need to get a little more humble. You got to get back to who you were. And he's trying to tell me, and of course I'm saying, no, it's not me, it's them. They're not doing. And the problem was, see, my business is gone. It blew up. Well, now it was going backwards. It kept going down. And he's trying to tell me, Rudy, the reason your business is going down is because of you, not because of. And of course, I wasn't accepting that. And Marty, before he got into the business, he was a construction worker. He used to put those big tires on those big earth moving machines and that kind of thing. And he was a short guy, but he was stocky. And I was a foot taller than him. And we're leaving the room and he's still trying to convince me. We're walking down the hall and it was one of those motels where it had a walkway outside of the rooms. And all of a sudden he just blew his top and he grabbed me by my suit and he lifted me up on this concrete wall and he started screaming in my face. And he used the language that he would have used when he was a construction worker. And finally I said, dang, you're serious about this, aren't you? And that's what it took to get through my hard German head, right? That changed my life. It really did, because later on in life, I kept remembering, to this day, I remember that example because it was so important to me. And any time that I saw myself getting off track, which happened consistently, because we've got to keep working on ourselves harder than we work on the business. In the years later, when that would happen to me, I realized what was happening and I'd get back to the basics. And folks, you'll find that happens when you'll see that happen to leaders in this industry often. People who didn't have much, and then all of a sudden they're doing so well because they were fortunate to have this business, a lot of people helping them, they get to certain levels, and then they forget where they came from. And I think it's our responsibility to help them get back to where they were. And sometimes you can't. Sometimes we lose those people, unfortunately. So,
wow, that's an incredible story and an incredible example. And it kind of reminds me of a couple things. One, just that continual success is directly correlated with having this continual growth mindset of always being a lifelong learner, which is something that I know that you really espouse. So that kind of reminds me of an example that I've heard. I know we've all heard this story, but two corporate executives are talking about going to all of the time and expense to educate employees and the sales field. And one kind of was wondering to the other, what if we go to all this expense to help educate and build these people and they leave? And the other said, well, what if we don't and they stay? So it is worth it to always have an investment in personal development and to be focused on growing people, because you never know the result of helping them grow, but you definitely know the result that you'll get if you don't help people grow.
And wouldn't it be great if you did help somebody else grow and develop, and then they moved on? All right, that's life.
Yeah.
That's what things are. That's you raise children and they move on. That's your goal is to do that. It's part of life.
Yeah, and it is such a tight knit community and sales channel that we always end up bumping into each other. We end up going to different companies, or a field leader may leave, but then a lot of the times they come back. So kind of having that long-term mindset of helping them grow, because again, you never know when it's going to come back around and kind of help you benefit. I love that. So I'm curious, as somebody that has kind of been on the ground, boots on the ground, and someone that has run multiple companies, what should companies be doing today as it relates to direct selling? Do you see it as kind of more of a formal program, informal, just something kind of a spirit that you help instill? How do you approach it from a corporate owner standpoint?
Well, my goal is to stick to the basics. I believe that this business is still built, as I said before, on relationships. And, when I joined this business in 1970, what I did was, when I got somebody started, I would get their goals, I would get their list of names, and I would have a meeting, whether that was a meeting in a hotel, or it was a one-on-one meeting, or a two-on-one meeting, or it was maybe a call, whatever it was, three-way call nowadays, right? Whatever that is, I stick to those basics and then help that person to do the same and upgrade to the next level. Those basics stay the same. Whether I do them or another company does them, that's how we got here. No matter what each leader does, and they all add their little twist to it. But I kind of try to relate it to dancing. Okay. From my day, it was Fred Astaire. And many people who are watching this maybe don't even know Fred Astaire, but he was marvelous. I mean, and they can still watch movies today of Fred Astaire. Well, here's my point. When Fred Astaire does a waltz, he does the same 4 steps that I do. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. The steps to a waltz don't change. But it's strange. Boy, when Fred Astaire does it, he makes it look marvelous. He has the twists and the turns and the things which I can't do. So it's not changing the basics that make you better. It's doing those basics better. That's the key. And I think still in today's world, we have to stick to those basics. And I'm saying this for a particular reason. I hope you don't mind me going
Please.
further.
No, please.
Because one of the things that's gotten me this last couple of years because of the pandemic, with social media combined with the pandemic, I think has been not a benefit to us. And in order to kind of say this or make a point out of it, let me go back to when I joined. When I joined, I just mentioned the things I did: get a list of goals, get a list of names, have a meeting, okay, and then help that person upgrade to the next level, teach them how to do it, and then they do the same with their people. That was the model. Okay, then I ran out of personal people to talk to, so I started. This goes back in the early 70s. I started to put ads in a newspaper, right, to try to recruit some people, and I got a couple of people off of newspaper ads. But you know what the problem with that was? As soon as they came into the business, guess what they wanted to do? They wanted to do newspaper ads. They didn't want to get their list of names. They didn't want to talk to their friends. Oh, no, I came off, so I'm just going to go put newspaper ads in. And the business went back down again because it wasn't a duplicatable model. And then go fast forward, years later, cassette tapes came along. Remember the cassette tapes? You were probably.
Of course. I made plenty of mixtapes growing up.
There you go. And in the early days, there was this, it was called Dead Doctors Don't Lie.
Mm-hmm.
I think the doctor's name was Wallach or something like that. Anyway, and these cassette tapes came out, and this doctor did this cassette, and they were going everywhere. I mean, I think everybody in America back then in the I think it was about the 80s, early 80s, must have gotten at least one or two of these cassettes, the whole country. Well, all of a sudden, because that was working, so now our distributors, all of our distributors in our company think, hey, that's what we need. We need cassette tapes. So we make a cassette tape, and everybody starts sending out cassette tapes. And for a little while, it lasted, and boom. But guess what? That company that doctors don't lie, that's gone. Right? It boomed for a while, and so did we. But then it dropped back down. And then fast forward, so that stopped working. And then fast forward a few years later, what came along? VCR tapes, right? Those big, bulky, square tapes. And that's when we met, of course, like people like Stewart. He made some of our first tapes we had, and we would put actors on there. And the reason was because one of the first tapes, VCRs that came out, and I forget the name of the company, but they had William Shatner on it, the guy from Star Trek. And he was the celebrity. And they sent these tapes out to people, and they were selling product, and the company was booming and thing. So everybody had to start making tapes. And I remember Stewart made one of our first tapes back then. We used Rayford Johnson. He was an Olympic athlete. And then we used Kevin McCarthy. So we used all these celebrities and made these tapes, and people sending out the tapes. Now, because they were more expensive than the cassette tapes, they would put an envelope, and if the person wasn't interested, they'd ask, please send it back. And you know what? We did some business with them, but it didn't last because pretty soon everybody was sending everybody tapes, and it went away. And what was still working? Talking to people, getting a list of names, having them have a meeting. You understand? And then what came next after all of a sudden the internet came along. Oh man, now with the internet, direct selling is over because all you have to do is send emails to everybody. Just take your whole list of names, send an email out, blast email out, and everybody's going to buy your product and join your business. Well, that was good for a little while. And then after that, what happened? Then websites came along. And a few people had made their own websites. And then finally, the companies made websites for their distributors, which we still have today. And that was a great tool. And it boomed for a while. But pretty soon, everybody was sending everybody to websites. And then business went downhill again. And then what was the next phase after that? And there's some in-between stuff. All of a sudden, social media. And that's where we are today. And that social media came along, and it became easy because all I have to do is blast out on the social media site or on TikTok or on whatever. I just blast out my products, and people are going to buy, and people are going to join my business. Well, for a little while that worked, but the real negative, in my opinion, you can argue with this if you want, was when the pandemic came along, because all of a sudden these millions of people are home doing nothing. And they get the social media that says, hey, you can work from home. And people were signing up like crazy. They were buying product. They were joining the business. And it became so easy. But then as soon as the pandemic was over, what happened? It dropped back down because those people never started correctly. They didn't start with a list of names. They didn't start with some personal development. They didn't start by having a meeting. They didn't start with the basics of the business. So as soon as the pandemic was over, boom, they were gone. They hadn't built any relationships. All they did was sign up in something, right? And today, that's the position we're in. And I think a lot of our leaders out there and a lot of the distributors in the field got so used to doing, I hope I don't offend someone here, doing very little and getting big sales, that all of a sudden, when it comes back to going to work, they're having a hard time getting back to the basics of the business. And I think that's what we got to focus on. So I hope I didn't overdo it for you, but.
No, that's such an important point, and something that I hope all of us go back and listen to and learn from. That was a painful lesson that we all learned. You know, we saw the reach, the awareness that we got from using some of these digital tools during the pandemic, and thought, oh, great, this is the new age. This is the answer to all of our problems. And then we learned very painfully that without those relationships, again, back to your point, there is no longevity. There is no depth of relationship there. And I think the other important point in there is the tools and tactics are going to change. They're going to come and go. But if we haven't mastered the basics, our businesses are always going to go backwards.
Right. And some people say to me, well, Rudy, you don't believe in social media. I love social media. I think it's a fantastic way to communicate, but it's not how to build a business. You don't build relationships on social media. You build relationships. Now, can you? Yes, if you're doing personal texting, you're doing personal calls, still do your calls. Okay, do it over social media. That's fine. Use YouTube, use Zoom, use FaceTime, use some way, but you got to keep that relationship with people going. And, a little backtrack, Wayne, I'm sorry but talking about this timeline here, when everybody got individual websites, this goes back, back in the 90s sometime. I remember at the Direct Selling Association conference in the middle of the year, when there was a direct selling leader who stood up in front of the room and said, network marketing is going to be over. Direct sales, the way we do business, is over because nobody is going to be joining these businesses anymore. Everybody is just going to go to websites. That was in the I think the late 80s or early 90s or so. No, it was in the 90s when we got websites. Is it over? No. And you hear people saying the same thing today. Well, social media is taken over. I mean, everybody's just going to, over social media, our business is done. That ain't true. This business is going to go on because if we build relationships, it will go on.
I love that. That kind of transitions into another thing I wanted to talk about. We have seen so many changes recently. A lot of those evolve around technology. Some of it is kind of generational, but I'm curious, as you look at the state of direct selling today, what is the promise of direct selling today? Is it any different than it has been over your career?
Well, certainly it's always changing because we always have new tools. Like I said, all of those things, that timeline I went just through, whether it was the newspaper or the internet or the VCR tapes, or all of those are tools that we benefit from. Makes our business easier, makes our business more available to people. It expands your universe, most definitely. So all of those tools are wonderful. But on the bottom of all of those tools has to stay the foundation, in my opinion, of the personal development and of the basics to this business of building relationships and building people.
I love that. So one of the dynamics that we're seeing now in direct selling, they've always been there, but recently there's been a little bit of an increase in companies acquiring others, companies merging, and you lived through this as a distributor leader. And one of the things I've always wondered about, during an acquisition, you're acquiring the assets of the company. As you mentioned, the greatest asset of any company is its people, its sales force that are out there, that are actually growing, sharing the product. I'm curious, what can companies do that are going through this, or what did you learn to retain that distributor force? Again, it's an independent, and I'm emphasizing the word independent, it's an independent sales force. So of course the company wants to acquire and bring them over, but what can they do to make sure that it's successful and to bring those two different fields and maybe communities and cultures together?
Yeah. Wow. So I got to again backtrack, and I'm sorry to have to do this, but I always have to go into history in order to get to the present. The reason I started doing it, when I was in that company that I first joined, Bestline went out of business in the USA in the early 70s, mid 70s, I guess it was. And I was in Germany at the time. So I still had my opportunity. But unfortunately, the people in the US lost their opportunity. A great gentleman, Jerry Brasfield, came in and bought what was left of the company. And we kept Bestline International alive. And there were quite a few companies then around the world, in Asia and South America, but the US went out of business. And that broke my heart because my friends, the people I had recruited, the people I got into the business in the States, lost their opportunity. And that always bugged me. So fast forward into the future, when I had my own company, anytime I heard of a company that wasn't succeeding, I tried to make it a point to go make a deal with that company, whether it's to buy, whether it's to merge, whether it's to somehow, not because I cared about their company, I cared about that distributor field. And so my goal was always to see if I could figure out how to bring that distributor field over into our company. And the key to doing that is, in my opinion, is to get out there and talk with those people and have them understand who you are, what your culture is, what your mission is, where you're going, and what it is that they really feel strong about. And usually there's only one or two super products in their line that they are very devoted to. So if you can maintain those in the long term, that's key. Number two, their marketing plan may not be exactly the same as yours. So figuring ways by looking through that, taking their compensation plan, putting theirs on top of yours, and see how are they going to fare under your plan as opposed to the plan that they're under. That is very, very important. So, because primarily, what do those distributors in that company care about? They care about their culture. Well, yes, unfortunately, they're going to lose that culture. They have to be convinced that your culture is equal to theirs. If it's not, they'll probably not hang around, in my opinion. But other than that, other than the culture of the company, they want to make sure that they get their commission checks on time. They want to make sure they get their products on time. And if you can convince them that those two things are going to continue to happen, and you're working with them individually, personally, I don't mean one-on-one, maybe with 1,000 distributors, but you're going to their meetings, not just having them come to yours. You're going and you're talking to them out in the field. My gosh, I spent a lot of time traveling around this country and even in the world to a lot of little towns, just talking to small groups of people to hopefully have them come over. And it's been successful for us. Many of the original leaders that we got into Xyngular back when we started 13 years ago was because we acquired another company and that was not doing well. And to this day, some of our top leaders in Xyngular are the people who came from that company. So again, they care about their future, they care about their products, they care about getting their commissions on time. And can you make that work? I think that's the answer.
Yeah, those are really important points. So if you were talking to somebody, playing a hypothetical here for a second, if you were talking to somebody who was in the process of starting and launching a direct selling company in today's direct selling landscape, what advice would you give them? And would it be any different today than it would have been 10 years ago?
Maybe not 10 years ago, Wayne, but 20, 30 years ago, it would have been, yes, it would have been different. My advice would be, make sure you have a lot of money handy, because it's going to take more investment than you think in today's world. Didn't used to be that way. I mean, in the old days, it was you could almost start one of these out of a garage. But in today's world, with all the things that you need, from the internet to the websites to the shipping systems that we have today, all of the things that it requires, I think today's world it's going to take some money, and whatever that amount you think you're going to need, double it, because that's probably what you'll need. So I don't know of any better advice than that, except what I've been talking about, and that is make sure you have a good, basic, simple system that incorporates relationships and builds people.
That's great. Great advice. So I want to shift into the last few questions that I have, talking a little bit about kind of life and leadership. I know that you have always had something that you were passionate about that's outside of family, outside of the businesses that you own and run, something that was just for you. And I know racing has been an enormous part of your life and a big passion. Can you talk about the importance, as someone that's run huge companies, of having that one thing that's just for you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, you have to have something as a quote release to kind of get away from business. And as you say, I mean, I've always kind of been what people would call a motorhead. Cars, motorcycles, they've always been in my life from way before I was even in this kind of business. I was a kid on the farm. I had a motorcycle. I had an old car on the farm I was driving around, and from driving tractors and stuff. So that kind of always lasted for me. And then I also had a big dream of wanting to fly. I always wanted to fly. So thank God I got into this business, and it gave me the opportunity to do all those things, because unfortunately, all the things that I like to do, from motorcycles to racing to flying, they all cost money and quite a bit of it. So yeah, and of course, one of the other things I am passionate about too, outside of just the fact that it's direct selling, is the nutritional industry. nutritional supplementation. I really, truly believe in nutritional supplementation. I believe that nutritional supplementation is the answer for a lot of people to maintain good health. In today's world, because of the way we grow and process and store and freeze dry and cook and all the things we do to our food, I personally believe we don't get enough nutrition. You know, doctors say, well, if you eat right, you don't need vitamins and minerals. That's true if you eat right. How can you eat right with the way we grow food today and process and then overcook it? And we're not getting the nutrients we used to need. So I think a good nutritional supplement is just an insurance policy. So I've been very passionate about spreading that message also, not just in our business, but in general. I have believed in that since back in 1975 when I was in Canada, when I first started to believe in nutritional supplements. And back then, no one believed in them. You go to a doctor in 75 and ask, should I take nutritional supplement? Heck no, that's harmful for you. Don't take that stuff. And one of the reasons I bring that up is I happen to be 76 years old. I still drive a race car. As a matter of fact, I was supposed to be in Seattle this weekend racing. I'll be down in Pahrump racing in a Trans Am series on a couple of weeks from now. At my age, I still get out on a motorcycle. This morning, I was out on a motorcycle with our hog group. We ride a couple of times a week. And I still fly my airplane. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that because, look, nutritional supplements work. I'm 76 years old and I still feel great and I still have the energy. Age is a number if you're willing to take care of yourself. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It does. And you've definitely been an inspiration on that front for me, learning about how to be a leader in corporate, how to balance family, work, personal passions, things like that. So again, you've always been an incredible inspiration. I love hearing the stories of your racing and all of that. It's really cool. So what does it take to be a really effective leader, not necessarily in terms of sales numbers and growing a business, but really having an impact on others? I think that's something that has really been kind of part of your leadership style. And I'm curious how you kind of can do both, but more have an impact on others' lives.
The answer to that, Wayne, for me would be, what I said before, is that personal development. Now, in my case, I was very, very, very fortunate because I had Jim Rohn as a mentor in those early days, okay? And I just bought into everything. And to this day, if you listen to my trainings, you'll hear Jim Rohn. I mean, I can't take him out of me because that's how I got to this point. Now, I was fortunate. I'm a good copier. I'm fortunate to be able to copy him. So I still do trainings. I still go and do for our groups. I'm on a 6-week series with our company every Wednesday night doing trainings on our business. So I can do it myself, fortunately. But if that's not the case and you're a leader in this industry, there are tons of great people out there that you can get on. There's a lot of people who know this industry well. And I think just convincing your organization, convincing your distributors of personal growth, reading good books, personal development good books, positive books, audios, listening to great audios. And there's lots of them out there. I mean, even to this day, you can get Jim Rohn audios. I would say, hey, get those Jim Rohn audios. There's great books on the market, old ones and new ones. But the old classics, as I mentioned before, Think and Grow Rich, The Power of Positive Thinking, The Magic of Believing, The Magic of Thinking Big, all the acres of diamonds. My little grandson is 14 years old, and he's now got his own little card business that he's doing, and he's buying and selling sports cards, right? And I got a deal with him. Every book he reads, he gets $20. And I'm not talking about big books. We got little books. Today they have these books called Tuttle Twins. They're great stories about America, and great stories about free enterprise, and great stories about financial independence and how to create it and so on. For every book he reads, he gets $20. See? So just, it may not be that something that you can do, but you can motivate other people to help your field do it. And I think that is vital for growing. And it can't be just, in my opinion, it can't be just once in a while, like once a year because you have a convention. Okay, so you invite some good speaker. No, it's got to be something consistent, because personal development is something that's got to be going on all the time. You know, discouragement, disadvantage, and disappointment is a big part of being successful. But unfortunately, discouragement, disappointment, and disadvantage puts most people down as soon as they have it. They can't. The average person who joins our business can't lift themselves back up. They need a helping hand. And when we have events, and when we have trainings, when we have Zoom calls, when we do these things, and we get good personal development people on there that are positive and promote the promise of the future, when we do that, we become battery chargers. So the people can come on the call or come on the Zoom and get charged back up in their belief. And then they go out in that negative 95% of the world that tells me you can't, it won't work, times are bad, this is bad. And the world takes them down. They got to have a place to come back to next week to get charged back up, which is what they did for me. They charged me back up consistently. And pretty soon after, I don't know, a couple of years, not only was I charged up, I started to become the battery charger. I started to duplicate what they did. I just repeated what Jim was telling me. And it wasn't just Jim, it was Bill Bailey and Marty Day and Joe Controli, a lot of good people back in those days. So I don't know, does that answer your question?
It does. No, I love that.
I'm a little long.
No, I'll take every second I can get with you. I'm learning so much. Last question here. As you look back, you've obviously worked with greats. You've gotten incredible advice that have had an impact on you and therefore other people. Is there one piece of advice that really has stuck with you the longest that you feel has had the biggest impact on running a business and succeeding in life?
Other than my faith in God and my belief in God, that I think everything happens for the best and happens for a reason. Other than that, I would say in this industry, what I mentioned before from Jim Rohn, and that is, for things to change, you have to change. For things to get better, you have to get better. And that is nonstop. Just because you've reached a new level doesn't mean you can stop. You've got to continue that growth. It's when I draw out my personal growth areas, attitude, belief, work, desire, and persistence. When I draw those out, there's with arrows, because it never stops. It's not a list. It's got to be a circle, because it'll never stop. To this day, I have to challenge myself constantly. To this day, I have to work on myself. To this day, we work on our business. Things are up and down all the time. That's the way this business is. And you've got to constantly be working on you and working on your business.
I love that. That is the perfect thought to end on. Rudy, I want to thank you so much for your time today. And on behalf of all of us in the channel, thank you for the incredible impact that you've had to shape the direct selling of today, the business that we're all operating in. We really feel like we are standing on the shoulders of giants, including yours and many of those people that you mentioned today. Thank you for continuing to lead and be such a great example.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for doing this, because, we are helping, this industry, we are helping a lot of people help themselves. And I am a prime example of that. I love this industry. I love what we are doing. We are literally changing people's lives for the better.
Thank you, Rudy.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. Please take a minute to give a 5-star rating and review to help Direct Approach continue to provide candid interviews and insights for direct selling corporate executives. Thank you for listening and supporting DSN and the Direct Approach podcast.